Today, I want to talk to you about three different types of heroes classified by three different authors. And I think each of these authors has a unique perspective to offer on what it means to be a hero. And I think they're all right in their own regard. Here are the three works that I'm going to talk about specifically today. And the three authors are obviously Tolkien, George R. R. Martin, and Frank Herbert. And if you're not familiar with any of these authors, I think you should really read them. I think they all have their interesting perspectives, their interesting points they're going to make. I don't think any of them are particularly perfect. Tolkien has his own genre of writing, and it's very simplistic but very deep, and it's very inspiring. And the mythos he creates is far unlike anything else I've ever read. And for that reason, we're going to talk about him first. I think Tolkien's heroes are often seen as simplistic. I think a lot of people don't like to credit Tolkien with the depth of his writing, but the truth about Tolkien's characters and Tolkien's heroes is that he writes them simplistically, not out of necessity, not because he couldn't write a good hero, but because he's not trying to tell a tale of real people. He's trying to create a tale that's like the Odyssey, that's like the Iliad, meant to teach you about what right and wrong is, meant to teach you about what good people do when bad things happen, how to face evil, how to have courage, how to be inspired. And I think that's the most interesting facet of Tolkien. And I don't know if Tolkien's heroes have any practicality to real life. I don't think you're going to go out there and become a great hero and be able to, take a kingdom. But I think they're great examples for the individual. Because what does it mean to be a hero nowadays? It means to face your fears. It means to face the things that are bothering you. It means to be able to take the responsibility of other people. Sacrifice yourself for the good of others. And what is more self-sacrificing than dealing with your own issues without projecting them onto others? And I think in that way, everyone can be a hero. In that way, everyone can face their own dragon and come back to the world and be a representation of what a human being can become. And I think it's extremely inspiring to read Tolkien and understand the ideas that he's trying to put across, because it's an idea of absolute good versus absolute evil and standing for something, standing for your beliefs. And while you can argue that everything's morally gray, I think if you start making this justification, then you can start opening yourself up to moral ambiguity. And this is something that Ayn Rand talked about in The Virtue of Selfishness, that when you see a culture that's obsessed with anti-heroes, that's a culture that is primed for the degeneration of societal norms and the degeneration of morality as a whole. And, when you start having the ends justify the means, that's when you start having awful things happen. And that's a really good segue into the next work we're going to talk about. And this is a Game of Thrones. It's the first book of A Song of Ice and Fire, George R. R. Martin's work that was eventually changed into the TV show Game of Thrones. George R. R. Martin is somewhat notorious for his writing style, the style of killing off characters to kind of create intrigue, and he'll really have you attached to somebody, then he'll get rid of them, and you'll be emotionally just upset because you like this character so much. And he's really good at doing that, and he's really good at storytelling, but his works don't carry the same mythos as Tolkien. They're not this world that seems like something that could never happen. Although there's some magic in his stories, it's not anything unbelievable, it's not anything fantastical, whereas Tolkien kind of feels like you're reading something out of the Bible, or out of some text, some Iliad, some Odyssey, something along those lines. And George R. R. Martin's work is much more grounded. It has heroes that are more realistic, and in particular the heroes that fail to be great rulers because they're not willing to do what it takes to be a good ruler. And in seemingly George R. R. Martin's perspective, it is the people that prolong power and the people that prolong stability and don't have the constant changing in political dominance that have the best rule, have the best kingdom, have the best security for the people that live in it. And basically, the story starts off with a once great hero who has become king, Robert Baratheon, and he's basically a failed king because all he does is drink and hang out with illicit women, we'll say. And it's gotten to the point where now he was once a great big strong man, but now he's described as a bear on a horse. When I read that, I laughed so hard. But it just goes to show that what makes a good hero doesn't make a good king. And this leads us into the next hero that George R. R. Martin deconstructs, which is Ned Stark, Robert Baratheon's best friend, his top advisor, and basically he's pushed off and he's executed, and basically his downfall comes because he was not willing to sacrifice his morality. His downfall comes because he was not willing to do something that was seen as dishonorable for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of the people. And this really brings us back to Machiavelli's number one rule: you must put the state before everything. If the state doesn't come first, then the state crumbles. And this is seemingly the idea that George R. R. Martin's putting forward, is that there's no such thing as a good person in politics. Good people don't last in politics. And it really paints a bleak picture of the world, but I think it's a realistic one. And I think it's a lens to view things. And I think it's, when you start seeing this, then you stop mythologizing people. You stop taking people as this monolithic figure that can do no wrong, that is always good, that is morally great. And it brings up people like Reagan, it brings up people like Kennedy, it brings up people like even more modern day figures. I don't feel like talking about politics right now, but this leads us into Dune. Dune is perhaps the best example of a hero that becomes mythologized, and bad things happen as a result of this myth. Bad things occur that the hero does not agree with, and he is almost ashamed of what his symbol has become, of what his name has become. And, to summarize Dune very quickly, there's a hero. He basically is given all this training. He's primed to become a great ruler. His family is basically betrayed, and he must build himself up from the ashes. He must become the phoenix and embody this mythos that he was born to take on. And he's born with this ability to basically compute like a computer, as well as trained to have the precognition abilities of this witch school during the story. And I know it sounds crazy. It really is weird, but the way all of these ideas tie together is so intricate and so masterfully done. If you haven't read Dune, really, really go read it. It's tremendous work. I don't know if it gets its praises sung as much as it needs to, but basically, Paul, the hero of the story, is actively growing his myth, actively becoming this messianic-like figure with these fantastical abilities, with all of these skills. And he really isn't anything other than a man. Really isn't anything other than a man that wants to get revenge for his family. And towards the end of the second book, his identity has become something that is so far beyond what he could imagine, that people are going out and having a holy war in his name. And he really doesn't like the burden of this. He really doesn't like that this is happening, because he just exists. And ultimately it talks about how people mythologize individuals, how people need to believe in something, how people need a hero, people need a movement, people need something to motivate them aside from their everyday lives. And I think this is an interesting implication, an interesting trend that we see happening today. Think about influencers, think about politicians, think about writers, singers. Everyone kind of seems to have a mythos built around them. Everyone kind of has people that put them on a pedestal and believe that they can do no wrong. And what Frank Herbert's really trying to teach you is that there's danger in this, that these things can kind of get outside of our control, and we need to understand these ideas before they take hold, before they control us, before they take us away from rationality and what is really right. And these are the three different types of heroes that I found extremely interesting. I think in certain regards, all of these heroes are somewhat real. All of these archetypes and all of these ideas are somewhat concurrent. And let me know what you think about these ideas. Let me know what you think about these authors. And if you want to get more of this, if you want to explore this idea more, I wrote an essay in my school community. You can find it pretty easy if you just sign up. Not really trying to push it, but just thought it'd be interesting. That's it. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one.